I'm going to talk about leaping. Some of the things that I find when I work with clients, right? And some of these clients are incredibly talented. Well, many of them are. What I mean by talented is they're talented healing facilitators, artists, uh, that kind of realm of consciousness. And yet, what I find not so puzzling, but in our timeline with everything that we know, they're afraid of exposing themselves, of speaking their truth, of like stepping up. I remember back in 2023 when I first started getting serious about this channel, mostly because of the twin flame debacle. You want to talk about misinformation, that was a big thing. So I started creating content for that reason, to kind of give another nuance, complex nuances of the twin flame journey. But like, it never occurred to me that I should second guess that decision, right? Because I was confident in what I experienced personally and with clients all over the world. I knew that this was something that I could share with as many people as possible, and could give them a different perspective that would not make them feel like they were crazy or stupid or codependent or toxic or whatever. And to be honest with you, it did give a lot of clients that feeling, and people I've never met actually. That feeling that what they were going through was something that only a certain group of people going through the twin flame journey would go through it, right? In other words, it was confirmation that they weren't alone, that many of the things they thought was insane, hundreds of thousands of us had gone through it. And what's interesting about that, with that truth, is that in spite of that reality, right, with not just me, but other content creators and coaches and psychics and so forth, is that there are some incredible, brilliant people right now as we speak who will not share their knowledge, not because they want to withhold it, but because they don't feel like they're ready, able, wise enough, or they have stage fright. They're afraid of fucking up. If you follow me on my lives, you know I have fucked up, I've stumbled, I have repaired, I have, yeah. I mean, the main thing is to talk from your heart, and also to allow yourself to be a conduit to the light beings who surround you, who guide you, and to just roll with it and not plan anything. So when I say make fear your ally and death your advisor, which was something that my twin used to talk about a lot, that was one of his great quotes that he loved to quote from Carlos Castaneda. It was really something extraordinary for me because, I hadn't seen him in like over 2 decades. And when I turned 40, I decided that I wasn't going to give a shit, and I was just going to leap. And I was just going to leap and fall on my face. In fact, I looked forward to failing, because in my new attitude, I realized that failing got me closer to winning. In fact, failing would teach me how to refine my approaches, would redirect me, would put me in the right place at some point, because my desires for X, Y, and Z came from a pure place. And I knew it. I knew that I wasn't looking to do X, Y, and Z, for example, for prestige, for fame, for private jets, and shit like that. I was doing things not just for myself and for my own healing, but for the collective. And so if I wasn't sure that what I was deciding on desiring and pursuing wasn't for also going to benefit the collective, I would sit with this desire, this goal, this dream, whatever the hell you want to call it. And I would sit and try to figure out, how would this benefit others? Why was this important? Well, because I knew that if it was just a selfish desire, that most likely it wasn't really aligned with the mission I had chosen in this incarnation. And how do I know that? Because I had turned down opportunities that would have made me very wealthy, because I was more interested in what I was aligned with. And that's could be, and believe me, I have no problems with money, trust me. But I knew that if I made those choices, I would turn my back on my soul's alignment. It was something, I knew that at 29. And so there were certain opportunities I had to turn down so I wouldn't be eaten up by, working 12 hours and, like, for example, stockbroking, becoming a stockbroker, for example, shit like that. I knew it would have consumed me in the wrong direction. And so trusting timing and trusting fate, I even turned down a contract for my visual art because I knew it was not in alignment with what and I was right. Later on, I was proven right. So this idea that it's you're not ready and you're afraid of failing as a sign that you shouldn't do X, Y, and Z is actually wrong. Fear of failure is actually, I'd say, definitely 80% of the population. It's why many of them don't try to do anything. Write a book, write 7 until one gets published. To make waves, you're going to fuck up, you're going to fail, and you're going to have to be persistent, and persistent to levels that will shock people. It's almost like no doesn't mean shit to you. It doesn't mean no, it means no for now. And so the goal is to look at where's the opening, where's the door. And sometimes you are, and many of you could be, this is a truth for some of us, not for all of you. Some of you are on the pulse of what people need right now. And some of you are like 10, 20, 30 years ahead of the game. And that those of you who are originators of concepts that are way ahead of the game, like Van Gogh was, and Nicholas Tesla, things that, people like that, right? It's lonely as fuck, but you still create the work. You still do what you got to do. You have to. You have no choice. Because if you don't, if you drop your body, well, when you drop your body, not if, when you drop your body, and you realize that you withheld because of whatever reasons, fear of failure, fear that it was too ahead of its time, whatever the hell it was, you're going to feel like you failed. And you're going to jump back into the conveyor belt of this incarnation, either here or on another realm that has a frequency match to this realm, and you're going to try again. So the reason why you need to allow yourself to fail, as a matter of fact, failing should be something you leap into. But what's interesting, and this is the irony I learned once I became fearless, is I always landed on my feet. Damn near always. Damn near always. And when I went against my intuition or heart-centered desire, it was either because I put my own needs aside for someone who had a higher need for me to give them sacred space, and I knew it was the wrong move, but it was the wrong move for the right reasons, or I delayed, and then I would stumble. But when I went from my heart to action, like literally where there was no hesitation, to be honest, I didn't fail. And as this becomes a new habit, it becomes your new normal, you start realizing that, and you grow into that courage actually, is that you realize that no matter what you do in this incarnation, as long as it's done with heart, integrity, love, there's nothing to lose. You have nothing to lose. Not to mention, it's one life. Who gives a shit anyway? As long as you're not doing anything to harm anyone. And if you harm someone, then you repair it. This old idea that to become successful, one has to step on people's backs and abuse and use and manipulate was a truth. It goes all the way back to Machiavelli, who wrote The Prince, based on the Borgias, if I'm correct. And of course, it was beyond that. You can go all the way back to Rome, and beyond that, you can go all the way back to Egypt. And beyond that, you can go all the way back to the Anunnakis. So it's not like we're breaking new ground here. But what we've learned in these incarnations over time, having used these really toxic methods to make out, to, win, whatever the hell winning meant for us at the time of our incarnations, is that that's no longer, and by the way, it was never an option that was the only option. And now we're fully aware that the option for us to win with an open heart and a peaceful consciousness is to do it for the greater good, ours and other people. And that should be your compass. Anything dealing with greed, revenge, I'll show them attitude, you will fail. In this particular timeline, you will fail. And you might say to me, but look at the Elon Musk and the Bill Gates and the Oprah Winfrey's and all these people. And I would say their day is done. The night is falling on their successes. And what is emerging from this understanding is that a new consciousness and a new level of success is rising out of those ashes. They are dinosaurs to what is now coming and what will be normalized. And heart-centered businesses and heart-centered goals and pursuits, which we're seeing in mass. I mean, incredible successes. And when I mean successes, please don't mistake it with, again, there's nothing wrong with having a private jet. Some people will have that, or having, I don't know, a horse farm or whatever, I'm saying, to me, success is doing what you love and thriving and making a living, and whatever that is. And there are people now breaking away from the matrix in multiple ways. When I used to have an art magazine in the 90s, it was a zine. Zines are like chapbooks. Anyway, it was a zine, and I would interview artists and publish poets and stuff like that. And what I found as I was interviewing artists that were really brilliant is that the system of their art being sold and exposed to was actually controlled by a small handful of curators who were assholes. And they had the pockets of the very rich, the very rich. Since then, there are artists right now on TikTok, YouTube, Facebook, painting on screen, right, on video. And some of them, in fact, many of them who are on the ball and, show up, to do the work, to complete work, and, literally putting their camera on a stand so that people can view their work and they speed it up or not, whatever, are selling their work before the paint dries. And they're selling their work for some serious money, from like $600-$700 to thousands of dollars, to tens of thousands of dollars, because of social media. So the game of the elite curators of visual art, for example, they might still think they own it, but they don't, because there are visual artists right now making a very robust living doing exactly what I just described. So the game is different. And the game is going to get even more into the hands of the individual creators, creative minds. And it's going to be ripped out of the hands of these supposed entitled, arrogant individuals who suppressed great work, from being accessed by general public. So really, the reason why most people aren't successful, well, there's many reasons, but is grief, depression, self-loathing, programming, brainwashing, and these collide to create stagnation, apathy, and then it becomes a normal. And so this is why I say you have to brainwash the brainwashing. You got to reset yourself back to zero. And it means that you have to commit to your growth, and you have to be willing to either read or use Audible or whatever, books on tapes, to brainwash yourself in your sleep. I'm not joking when I say that. I did that. I was doing that in my 20s. But I was not doing it consistently because I had a partner and this, that, and the other. And so there was some stagnation that happened. But ultimately, when I hit a certain age, I realized that if I wanted to change my life, I had to change how I was thinking about myself and the world. And that's when I decided, let me just, I don't give a shit. Let me just leap. Let me just make, and it was weird because the magic of making that decision started showing itself in ways that would make me laugh on the spot. Like I knew what was going on. I knew my guides were showing me, we got you. No matter what you do, we're here. And we've just approved your application for this moment. And it was amazing. And I would just laugh. And it just was barreling through me again and again. And of course, it gave me confidence that if I asked for the right reasons, it would be given to me. And it was. And I've told stories of that here and there. I scatter these stories like seeds, all over the place. You'll see them in my lives on YouTube if you want to check it out. But I talk about these things. Extraordinary stories, extraordinary. So by the time I met I went back into you and my twin in 2014, he was talking about that basically. Make fear your ally and death your advisor. So what he meant by death was, if this was your last day on earth or last week, are you doing what you want to do? Are you with the person you want to be? This is why it makes me so sad when I see twins, for example. And I'm going to talk about twins right now because these relationships are not like what people think, okay? There are very few people in the world that will ever be loved like this, betrayed like this, misunderstood like this, understood like this, desired like this. It's crazy. There's really nothing like it. And you can't understand this experience unless you've actually walked. I mean, you literally have to walk it. It's like me describing to you a perfume, right? You've got to smell it and you have to wear it. You got to live with this perfume. And so twin flame relationship is like me describing to you a perfume you've never smelled before. There's no way I can describe it. I can give you all kinds of adjectives, all kinds of words, evocative images, and still you'll never know what it smells like. You never will unless you smell it. And so I think that's probably the best analogy I can come up with. And so to be in a twin flame journey is that it tears you down and builds you back up. And it will do it multiple times until Everything you thought you had healed is really, truly, finally, truly healed, understood. And it will take you to the next level of ascension. And when you drop your body, you would have, I hope, released on your own path some scars that had blocked you in multiple incarnations from preventing you from speaking your truth, expressing your talents, and coming into union with your twin. All of these above. So making fear, make fear your ally and death your advisor is one of my favorite, one of many of my favorite quotes, because it really pushes you to analyze everything. And there's points in your life, and this is known, cycles, if you will, where you will think you're in a stagnant place. In other words, it'll feel like everything has stopped. The clock has stopped. In other words, you're stuck in a place you don't want to really be in. After a while, you're bored out of your mind, but you're stuck. You can't move forward. And this is never a punishment. This is a time of assessment. It's hermit time, literally. You're being forced by the universe to hermit. And what that entails is to analyze all the things that have happened to you from the beginning of this incarnation to this, to the point you're at. You're being asked to digest, decompress, heal, untangle, release, forgive, weep, grieve, and sometimes grieve relationships as if they are deaths, because they are. Why? Well, because they're either over, or what you thought was going to happen is never going to happen in this incarnation at the very least. And it is kind of a death. And so there's grieving. There's also grieving of your own old self. It's okay to grieve the old self and to put it to rest, and then to welcome the new self from the ashes of the old self. And you will be riddled with fear. And there's something interesting about the consciousness of the soul, which is kind of a deficit in some way, because the soul doesn't care about time, and the soul always feels immortal, because it is. and none of us are going to survive this. We're all going to drop these bodies, right? We're all going to die. We're all going to drop these bodies. So what's interesting about it is that the soul's never in a hurry for anything. And we tend to drag our feet in certain situations with absolutely no urgency sometimes. And that is a concern, because you should want to pack as much as you can in terms of life experiences. And yet, at some point, the universe will absolutely stop everything, as if you've run out of gas, quite literally. And in those moments, you can still have some urgency, and the urgency should be in the quiet times of you journaling and expressing within yourself what the kind of life, the kind of experience you want to claim for the next, cycle that you're going to be entering in. And after this dormant period releases you back into the world, you should have plans. You should be urgent. You should not hesitate. You should not look back. You should not regret. You should just keep it moving. And you should move your life in such a way that every day is an excitement of new discoveries, and letting go of what clearly the universe does not want you to own, hold, possess, or experience, realizing it's not for you. If it was for you, it would literally float into your hands. If it's not for you, there will be a push-pull dynamic. Sometimes you're being tested by the universe to see how much, if you're going to focus and insist. And there's a point where, if you're very good with your heart coherence, you'll know whether this is right or wrong. I did an exercise with a client yesterday in heart coherence. I asked her to ask a question. It was a very important question, very almost do or die question, actually. Not being dramatic, I'm serious. And she closed her eyes, and the answer, she said, exploded into light, which would have been a yes. And you know what she did next? Within seconds of that, she fucking backpedaled and second guessed it and said, did that really happen? As if I would answer that question with, of course it did. No, of course I would never say that. Why? Why wouldn't I say that? Because she had to own that experience. It wasn't my job to manipulate her into accepting it. She had to decide if she was going to allow her monkey mind to continue the fuckery, or if this was going to be a moment of clarity where she owned that message from the seat of her soul. And when people backpedal on magic like that, because I can assure you, she had never done that exercise. I know it for a fact. And the way it exploded into light wasn't just a yes, it was a fuck yes. Hell yes. And she still fucking denied it. So the logical mind will train you like a fearful dog not to do a fucking thing, because none of the things presented to you will be logical. From a logical mind, and let me just say, a logical mind is a fear-filled mind. It will argue itself out of everything, from asking the best-looking girl in the room out on a date to going up to a billionaire and asking for an investment on a deal, to quitting your your six-figure job and going to Bali for 6 months and seeing if what you're going to learn from yourself by that experience. And when you're in your 20s, how in the fuck are you afraid of just grabbing a passport and leaving a country and living in another one for 3 months? It's not like you're not seeing that being experienced by people your age all over the world. It's not like when I was a kid, there was none of that. I would meet people like that when I traveled with my family. I would meet amazing people, extraordinary people, doing all kinds of crazy shit. And it was normal. But now, see, this is what I don't understand, the excuses here. But now you've got the social media system that's telling you and giving you 30-second to maybe 3-minute feeds of how this shit works and how to do it and where to do it and what's the best way. And it's not like the instructions aren't there, literally, from hundreds of thousands of people, if not millions of people. Definitely some really solid influencers are showing the way, and they range in age from 20-something to all the way up to they're in their 60s and 70s. And yet people are still afraid. And so if you did anything at all in 2025, it would be to do what Michael Newton wrote so brilliantly in his book, Surrender Experiment, which I talk about all the time. This is a book I talk. Why? Because every time the monkey mind told him not to do X, Y, and Z, he fucking did the absolute opposite. Every fucking time. And the irony is it made him a billionaire. And the last thing he wanted was to be a billionaire. It never occurred to him. What he wanted was the monkey mind to shut the fuck up. That was all he wanted. And all he wanted was to meditate and meditate and meditate. And he was a professor at university in Florida. And he was completing his master's, I believe. And then he was going after he wasn't sure if he wanted his PhD. But every time his monkey mind would say, absolutely not. This is not what I want. It's such a bother. It's such a pain in the ass. He would actually go against it. Hence the title, The Surrender Experiment. And this is the book that solidified something I decided, I'd say 15 years before the book was ever published. And it just reaffirmed what I had always known in my heart. And there were pauses here and there because I am a loyal person. And what that means is when you have other people living with you or in part of your life, there's going to be stagnations, not based, once you get to this point of you're surrendering to what, to what your truth is and what you want to experience. There are responsibilities of people around you. And at some point you have to sit back and ask yourself, at what point do I say no to being the sacrificial, person in this dynamic? At what point do I choose me? And it's a particularly hard point for most women, majority of women, and many men, because they put their themselves aside for the benefit of the family unit, for example. But at some point, you have to ask yourself, is this ultimately the right decision for me to not do what I want? And here's why I'm saying this. Because at some point, some of the magic you'll experience will benefit everyone you love. It might not be immediate. It could be 5 years later. It could be 10 years later. But I can assure you that if you do it from a place of love and selflessness, and sometimes being selfish to be selfless in the long run, you'll find that you're being driven to divine appointments, beautiful experiences that will grow you and bring you to your mission. And in the end, you will be there for those you love, and you will have all the wisdoms they would have needed all along. Sometimes separations, like there's a crossroad moment where you part ways, and you do it for the greater good. And then there's an alignment that brings you back together. And this is extremely difficult for people to do. And you have to have faith in your own self. You have to have faith that there's things you need to learn, and you can't learn them in those situations because they're too limiting. And again, that takes faith in yourself, and it's an internal compass that you feel, and it has no logical point. Logic will not help you in these situations. It's a feeling, it's a drive you can't control. That's when you know it's real. It's as if you're being led by the scruff of your neck, by the universe. You don't know where you're going, not really sure, but you know that it's beyond your control. And you go with it. Surrender. And so if you get anything out of this little chat that we're having, even though it's one-sided, I want you to look at 2025 as a time where you fucking don't give a shit about failing, where you decide exactly what you want to do, and you don't second guess, and you don't use logic to figure it out. You feel it. You drop into your heart, your body, your visions, the voices that support you, and you journal what you want to experience and what you want to become. And then you rip through it. 2025 should be a year where you just rip through what you really want to experience. You just do it. I remember hearing a story. It was a while back. Hang on, I'm trying to, I think it was around 2006 or 7. There was these guys that were attorneys, litigators, and they were very successful. And I'm going to say, I think they were in the East Coast. But anyway, they went to Italy and traveled through Europe, and they got enamored with chocolate making. So they had this idea that they didn't want to be fucking attorneys anymore. Clearly, they must have done it for mommy and daddy, right? So they decided to started a chocolate company. And I believe the company was called Valron, if I'm correct. And they went after their passion, chocolate. They went from being attorneys to chocolate makers. And it was a successful move. And they ended up doing what they loved. I can't tell you how many people I met who were architects, attorneys, a lot of psychiatrists, psychologists, who really felt passion for cooking. And many of them became caterers and opened businesses in mass manufacturing of food. And at the time, there was the Food Channel and all kinds of shit like that that was really inciting people to like follow their bliss. Not to mention Joseph Campbell had coined "Follow Your Bliss." Here, they just told me Joseph Campbell actually followed his bliss. You should look at some of his interviews. When he was a young man, I forgot the college. I'm doing this off the top of my head. I totally forgot the college he was supposed to go to, but it was it was in the Northeast. But anyway, there was a college that approached him, and they wanted him to teach X, Y, and Z. I think he was like 25 or whatever. And he refused. He was like, no, I'm not interested in teaching that. And he said, the only reason I could do that was because, well, I didn't have a family. I didn't have a wife. I didn't have kids. And if I was going to starve, it was on me. And finally, another college, I don't know if it was Vassar, but it was one of these colleges on that level of elitism. And I think, but I'm probably wrong. But anyway, this other college came to him finally and said, look, and this was after a year and a half. They said, look, we don't care. Teach whatever the fuck you want. But he waited. It took a year and a half for him to finally get that offer. And that offer he took because it was along the lines of what he wanted. And he became the Joseph Campbell that we love so much. So when you stick to your guns and you really honor what you desire most, the universe will conspire to help you. And it will do it because it was your mission all along. And how long it takes, to be blunt, there are two phases to that. One phase is you will be in amnesia anyway, not realizing you have a mission until you wake up to it. And you might wake up at 40 or whatever. And some of you will be awakened to your mission younger. And the only thing that would prevent you from actually accessing the ability to live your mission is your monkey mind. But when it's time and you don't allow fear to block you, to jail you, then you will actually succeed in your goals. And when there's delays, it's divinely set as a delay for a reason. It's kind of like losing your car keys in the house and looking for them and you're late for an appointment for 20 fucking minutes. Finally, you find them. A smart person says, I probably avoided an accident. A person in 3D logic just gets frustrated and pissed off. But a smart person that's spiritually smart, wise, realizes that the universe hid the keys so that you wouldn't be in a crack up in an accident. So it's that kind of understanding about why things happen when they do and when they don't. And understanding how you fit in the middle of these energies and being very honest with yourself as to whether or not you're sabotaging yourself or you really are being held back because it's not time yet. And only you can answer that question to yourself. You have to answer that question to yourself. Or you can work with a coach. I know a lot of people who have succeeded massively work with either a healing facilitator or a healing facilitator / coach. And I think it's a wise investment. I think it's smart to do that over anything else, in my opinion, if you had to choose, because they will bring you to your alignment. It will help you because there's a spiritual aspect and the coaching aspect, and it's kind of like an interesting quantum therapy, if you get my drift. And that can be very useful to you But what I think is also equally important in the beginning of your journey, in lieu of that, is to just be willing to fail. In fact, run into failure. You should be like running towards it, not running from it. If you're not willing to run towards your fear of failure, you're not ready to heal your limitations that you've set upon yourself. So there's a point. There's got to be a point in every human being where they have to be sick of their fucking limitations and sick of their delusions that they don't matter and that what they have to offer won't be received. There's a point where you should be fed up enough to fucking just rip the the veils of illusions of fear and just literally run towards fear, run towards failure, and just get it done. And so one of the things, like for example in writing, right, writing a book, the average novels that the first time writer has to write is 7, supposedly 7 fucking books before one book finally hits. And it's because you're refining the way 7 fucking books before one book finally hits. And it's because you're refining the way you're expressing yourself. You're also learning what is interesting to you. And you're not really writing, and this is something that people make a mistake of. You don't write for other people. You write for yourself. And either people will align with it or not. And that's just how writing works. Art is the same thing. Visual art is you paint for yourself. Healing isn't something you don't look for what is the most popular healing isn't something you don't look for what is the most popular healing methods. You ask yourself and you look into various healing methods, like, is it sound? Is it touch? Is it coaching? You know what I'm saying? What is it? Is it becoming shamanic? Is it to become a shaman? And what is it? What is it that you want to experience? Is it herbs and apothecaries and writing books on healing? When you look at Barbara O'Neill talk, she's fucking excited. She's like, she could do this all day long. Like, she's on the boards talking. She's not boring herself. And you can see her excitement in the way she moves and her eyes and she's there. She's all present. And that's what you have to feel about what you pursue. If you're not feeling that and you're putting on a show, people will feel that, and no offense, but they will walk away. They'll know you're full of shit. They'll know you're performing for views, likes, whatever. You can feel when people love what they do. And that's the first point. That's actually the most important point. Do you love it? Does it keep you up at night? Is there a passion to it? Do you think about it when you're not doing it? Are you fucking obsessed? And it should be that way. It should actually move you. And maybe at 4 o'clock in the morning when you can't sleep, you decide, instead of like scrolling shit, you're like working on it. It's one of the reasons, for example, where I don't start writing a book until I know I can commit 90 days minimum to writing 6 to 12-hour days, because I get completely overwhelmed in a good way, obsessed, and dragged into the stories. And I can't do anything else because it's almost like somebody's got the faucet running and I have to type as fast as possible. If writing doesn't do that for you, then writing isn't for you. I'm just gonna be honest with you. It's not for you. If painting isn't doing that, then painting's not for it. If studying herbs and trying to figure out how to heal women's hormones or men's using herbs, and that keeps you up at night, that's what you need to pursue. And you need to commit to creating content on these subjects, not weekly, not monthly, daily. You should put yourself on a calendar. If you were on a payroll, if you had a client paying you to do content for them and your paycheck relied on it, you would fucking do it because you know you'd get fired. So you need to be your own boss. That means that you need to actually put yourself under notice, that you have to create content, that you have to promote yourself, that you have to do it. Now, what's interesting is that there's certain things, and I'll give you me as an example because it's actually a good example. When I wrote Recall, I didn't give a shit that it was massively erotic. I didn't care. It didn't occur to me that I would never be able to read it out loud on a live never, because it's too fucking raw. But I wrote the book because, but it's not erotic either because it's past lives. It's erotica, past lives. It's creative nonfiction. There is no place to put it. And I didn't care. I wrote the book because I needed to write the book. It needed to be born. So sometimes you create things that are a little ahead of the game. You know what I mean? Like, for example, what was amazing about Truman Capote when he wrote In Cold Blood, it was the first time a person like him, a writer like him, had ever created the concept of creative nonfiction. Right? I don't know if you ever read In Cold Blood, but it's fucking brutal, but brilliant and brutal book. I remember seeing it on my parents' shelf when we lived in Paris, and just the name, even at the age of 6, 7 years old, it shook me. But I never forgot that title, and I never forgot the fact that I wanted to read that book. Instead, what I read from him was A Breakfast at Tiffany's, which is a brilliant book, actually. But my point to it is that he was passionate about what he wrote. I mean, he was obsessed when he wrote Cold Blood and the way he was interviewing these guys and so on and so forth. If you ever read about how he wrote the book and what he went through to write the book, well, it's in the book, but you'll see that he was obsessed. And he could not, so he created a genre in writing. Just like Dr. Joe Dispenza was a chiropractor, was in a very, very serious car accident. He was on a motorcycle, and he should have been in a wheelchair from the neck down, or I think from the chest down. And he self-healed in a miraculous way that brought him to create the kind of self-help and coaching and his seminars, the level of brilliance that he originated from his experience of being on the, he lost his ability to move his body. And he decided that he was going to heal himself, and he did. And it was a massive fucking supernatural miracle, let me say. But he wasn't second guessing what he was co-creating and originating. He just went with it. He didn't look over his shoulder. He didn't hesitate. He knew that what he was going to share could actually help people. And it's helped millions of people. And it continues. And these are books that I always recommend to clients. And I can't thank him enough. I mean, he came up with a way for you to get into meditations. It's his kaleidoscopes at 432 hertz. They're on YouTube. I think they're still on YouTube. But if you put Dr. Joe Dispenza's kaleidoscope guided meditation at 432 hertz, I swear to God, they'll come up. And it puts you in a zone, the kaleidoscopes. And he's constantly originating new things and working with neurologists all over the world. One of the things I had learned a long time ago, I think it was 19 years ago, I remember meeting a professor. I think he was he was a psychologist, and he said the problem with um, the various modalities of studying the brain is that psychologists and psychiatrists get together to some level, but neurosurgeons and different MDs at different aspects of studying the brain don't get together to talk about the various things we've all learned individually in our little camp about the brain. And so we'll never be able to truly understand how the brain works and how we can heal mental illness or also traumatic brain injury or um, ADHD and autism or none of that, because we're not getting together. So there was like a breaking of these little camps. And I found that to be true with a lot of these professions, is that they don't bring all their wisdoms in under one conference to share what they've learned in the trenches. This is why we're still behind on so many things that we should be way ahead of right now, if that makes sense. I hope I'm making sense. Fuck, it's 2:00 in the morning, but hopefully it does make sense. But the message that many of you may have had from originating things that are ahead of the game is that it might not be worth birthing these kinds of ideas or projects because it's not going to give you the, how would I put, well, money, for example, money. And what I'm going to say to you is you will be asked by the universe to create things that are way ahead of the game, but you will also be creating things that will actually be received by the public, and it will give you the kind of gifts, financial gifts that you need. And once you have a fan base, people that follow you and love you, they will discover your products or projects that are ahead of the game. And the softer projects that are more apt to be accepted by the public, those people will want more, and they'll end up finding that little book or that little thing or whatever it is that's way ahead of the game, and they'll gobble it up like cake because they'll want more and more of what you have to offer. You see what I'm saying? So you don't want to deny yourself the right to birth your project thinking that it's not going to get anywhere. You have to realize that you were born to put these projects together. You were actually given the task to be the messengers of these things. There was a story, and I've talked about this story before. It's a really cool story, but sad at the same time. There was this composer. Greg Braden talks about this story. There was this composer, a friend of his, who had written this incredible piece of music. It was absolutely extraordinary. And Greg Braden would say to him, well, when are you going to pull it out? I mean, when are you going to release it? I mean, oh, no, he would say. His friend would say, no, this composer, it still needs, I think I could just improve it. I could totally improve it. I just know. So this went on for a year. And one day, Greg Braden was driving, and he had the radio on, and he heard this incredible piece of music, and he recognized it. And he called his friend when he got to the hotel or whatever, his destination. And he said, hey, you got your music out. And his friend goes, what are you talking about? No, I'm still working on it. He goes, no. I heard it on the radio. He goes, no. And Greg Braden said, that's when I realized that because my friend, who was a composer, had held on to this piece of music far too long, and so the universe removed it from his hand and dropped the inspiration into the crown chakra, if you will. Another composer who created the piece of music and released it – because there was no other way to explain it. So the irony is when you hold on to what is being shown as a mission for you, if you don't deliver the product or whatever, it will be taken out of your hand and dropped into someone else's hands, and they will deliver the work, which makes sense. If the postman gets sick, there's another postman who's going to be taking on, the delivery of the mail. Makes sense, doesn't it? It's no different with the universe. So if you're given something to deliver, right, to create, to birth, and to deliver to the world, you better do it. Because if you don't and you hesitate again and again, that product will be removed from your hands and given to someone else to deliver. It's really that simple. And it might be hard to, to accept. But ultimately, playing small. He does have a cool deep space meditation. Yeah, he does. He has a lot of those. He has a lot of great guided meditations. People get weirded out by his voice. But his voice, trust me when I tell you, his voice is, he does. When I first, I'm going to tell you, let me put it this way. When I first was listening to his guided meditation, the first, say, week or two, I was annoyed a little bit. And then I thought to myself, wait, hang on. He's working with neurologists. He's watching people pop in his retreats. He knows what he's doing. So then I did his Becoming Supernatural, which is on Gaia. And it's episode 1. I think it still remained free, thank God. But if you go 18 minutes before the whole episode ends, there's a guided meditation on the abyss. And that meditation is actually extraordinary. And you can actually go into the realms of the abyss. And I have. And it is so beautiful that tears were, every time I've done it, tears of bliss are streaming down my face. It is the most unbelievable meditation. I wish he had it as a standalone to just get, because I would totally get it. I have some of his other meditations that are on his website, and they're all, he has a walking meditation. He's got so many meditations, it's insane. But if you can get patient with him and get into the rhythm of his voice, he studied why the way he talks helps people cross into that sweet spot, as he puts it. And you just have to be patient. You gotta be patient. You can't. I had a guy, it was interesting too. There was a guy that was telling me, he was telling me about, and by the way, this was all texting shit, and it was on social media. And so he was having nightmares of avalanches. And he was obsessed with avalanches. I go, well, that's a past life thing. He goes, no, it's not. I'm just into avalanches. I go, listen, dude, I don't go out of my way to watch avalanches, okay? But I did go out of my way to study Atlantis. You see what I'm saying? But avalanches, for you to be obsessed with avalanches and you to have nightmares, that's a past life stuff. No, it's not. I'm like, no, I'm telling you, it is. Because you get obsessed with shit you haven't resolved. Have you ever done hypnotherapy? And he said, that's for weak minds. And I said, no, it's for strong minds. Strong minds are fearless, and they will surrender to the person they trust, right? Because you got to trust your hypnotherapist, obviously. And they will surrender, knowing that they need to fall back and go and just go in. No, weak minds are easily hypnotized. And that's actually not true. There are 2 kinds of states of consciousness that are hypnotized. One is a despairing mind, a mind that is actually going through some massive pain and they want to fucking understand so they can heal it. And a powerful mind that just wants to know more about itself. Those are the weak minds, scared minds cannot hypnotize at all. I'll tell you that straight up. That's usually the opposite. So, being me, I stopped. I mean, I'm not going to argue with this guy. I was like, dude, you should try it again, but whatever, I understand. Have a good day. And that's it. Like, I'm not here to convince people that what he was going through is past life. Not to mention, I was picking up on the energy because the way he was talking about avalanches. I don't know about you, but I'm not. I like, I look at tsunamis, I look at avalanches, but I don't go obsess. I don't obsess over it. Everything I've ever obsessed over was, in the end, a past life connection. So, of course, the classic obsession is what? Well, it's Egypt, Atlantis, Lemuria, Mesopotamia, and now finally we're being more comfortable in talking about past lives on other planets, Andromeda, Syria, and Orion and Pleiades. And I was obsessed with the Pleiades and my entire life, the Seven Sisters, and I've even done art on the subject of those that star system. So clearly, what you're obsessed is memories. It's an echoing, it's a haunting of things that you experience. It's the way you lost your life, or it's a collapse of civilizations. And you're going to look for books on that subject like crazy, or you're going to be obsessed with that in whatever capacity. It's normal. And it's interesting to me that people get this obvious hint, if you will. It's not a fucking hint either if it's you're obsessed over it. And you see how the monkey mind works, and it still denies it. And it then self-aggrandizes itself by saying, I'm a strong mind, or else, and it's interesting to me because you would think people would realize that it's a sign towards more and deeper self-understanding, and yet they run from it instead of being curious. And to me, curiosity, of all things that can be possible, is a sign of incredible intelligence, in my opinion. I find that when people just think that whatever they see is real and that's all that's real, it's a sign of fear, in my opinion. Fear of the unknown. And you would think after a few incarnations, like, I don't know, at least a few hundred incarnations of being afraid of the unknown, you'd get sick of that shit and you'd want to know everything. But I guess that's how some of us are, you know what I mean? Curiosity and wanting to know the truth at any cost. That's the big thing, at any cost. So anyway, so any questions or comments? I've been rambling for like, I don't know how long. Any questions or comments? So 2025, if you are doing the same old tired, resolution, if you're not writing shit that scares the shit out of you to do, you know what I mean? Like public speaking, sending your short stories or poetry to magazines, finding an agent, getting your PhD, traveling to a foreign country whose language you don't know. Yeah, pretty much everything. If you're not scared of a couple things next year to do, then you're not living your life in an authentic way. You're actually playing small. I'm just being very blunt. You're playing small. So 2025 has to be the time of fearless power. And you have nothing to lose. Like literally nothing to lose except a boring life. That's about all you're going to lose, is being bored, boring, and losing a boring life. That's when you'll start getting excited. When was the last time you went horseback riding? When was the last time you went skiing? When was the last time you went to a foreign country whose language you didn't know? Like, that should be a stop. Like, that should, like, I don't understand why people would be, what, there's nothing wrong with being in a country whose language you don't know. Not to mention, you've got fucking Google Translator and all kinds of fucking gadgets and gadgets to actually get you through anything. So, and not to mention, why not learn the damn language whose country you want to visit? Most likely, if this is a country that you're really obsessed with, it's probably because you had an incarnation there. So it wouldn't be hard to learn Portuguese, Arabic, Japanese, Cantonese, or Mandarin, or Farsi, or whatever the fuck language, or Russian, whatever it is, whatever, Italian, whatever. The main thing for 2025 for all of us is for us to really stretch even further on our tiptoes, and really stretch even further still until we feel the blast of energy of change within ourselves. Change that literally has us in awe and gratitude and tears of relief that we did something we never thought we could do. And the more I stretch, personally me, the more I feel fearless. And I have to tell you, I didn't start my life like that. It didn't begin like that. So it's not something I lived when I was younger. My father was like that, that's for damn sure, but I was not. And so when you start moving in that direction, you'll see how it snowballs. It's going to snowball. You're going to do shit that's going to surprise you. You're going to accomplish shit that you never thought you'd accomplish in a million years. You're going to break boundaries in yourself, and you're going to break records for yourself. And you are going to inspire other people you might never meet, whose names you will never know. And you will inspire people who know you or who know of you. And it's not for fame. That's the last, in fact, most of us, that's the last thing we want is to be known. Trust me, most of us, it's funny, and this is something that also is blocking many of you from going public in a big way, because many of you do not want to be known. You just want to be left the fuck alone. Just give me a check and I'm gone. Just let me do my bliss, pay my bills, and I'm good to go. You know what I mean? You don't want to be famous. That's the last thing. And there are ways to keep yourself anonymous. And there are ways that will keep you anonymous until you're ready, maybe never, maybe someday, to become renowned for whatever you've put out. Some of you have careers where you have to keep it hush, hush, hush. And I understand that. And that's okay. But ultimately, eventually, if the universe wants you to be more public, you'll have no choice but to accept your assignment. And you'll have to make some decisions. But become a t-shirt slogan in 2025 and moving forward. Become a t-shirt slogan. What does that mean? It means like go big or go home. Become that. Leap. Do it. Run towards it. Crash into it. But don't do one more year of allowing fear to chokehold your passions. Because when you're on your deathbed, and this is why it's very good. I mean, I don't need to do it, but maybe you need to do it. Go and fucking volunteer in a hospice place. Maybe that's where you'll get your kick in the ass. Maybe in the first quarter of 2025, if you're still riddled in fear, then here's my homework for you. Go and volunteer to a hospice facility. Go twice a week. Walk in one day and see an empty bed of a person you got to know who died over the weekend when you didn't come in. Live that. Live the experience of seeing an old woman or an old man telling you about the love of the life, the love of their life they did not go after because they went for the safe bet, the logical choice. Maybe you need to hear those stories and then come back one day and see that they're gone. They died. Maybe that's going to kick you in the ass to realize the impermanence of life. And you have nothing to lose, nothing, ever. You'll never lose. The only thing you'll lose is boredom. So maybe that's what you need. So whoever you are, go volunteer in a hospice facility and go in with your notebook, take notes, journal it. And maybe that will scare the shit out of you more than be afraid of leaping into space and landing on your feet. I think that could actually be quite good for you. I think every 18-year-old about to graduate from high school should go and do that for a month or two. Because we need more fearless souls. We're about to go through a massive transition, which I talked about in some of my other lives, which again aren't, they're uploaded on YouTube if you want to check it out, about the 1%. And we need fearless, creative, irreverent co-creators. We don't need fear-filled, play small, safe bet, logical-minded people in 5D. It doesn't work. It's not a match. So, whatever it takes to scare you into living your life with power is what you're going to have to do. Because you have to look at your life, depending on how old you are, and say, am I where I want to be? Am I living the life I want? Am I bored out of my fucking mind? Yeah, well then in that case, you better fucking go bold. And I think that's what, it's not I think, I remember that's what happened to me. And that's when I went, fuck this. And I just started creating massive change. And I started creating stuff I loved. And I didn't care who bought it, who understood it, who wanted it, who would read it. I didn't give a shit. It wasn't about that. It wasn't even about making money at the time at all. It was just about creating whatever it was. And not using perfectionism as an excuse to delay birthing the project into the world. Remember the music with Greg Braden, the composer? Yeah. Now, I heard that story way after, but I've always believed that even if the product was not exactly perfect, it was still good enough to release. And learning from that truth. And you know what? I got ahead as fast as people who were perfectionists. In fact, some of the things I was creating and birthing were learning lessons, and some of it was well received, and some of it was feared. I'll give you an example. I think it's a pretty good story. So I'll tell, and I've told this story before, so whatever, but some of you might have not heard it. So I had done a breast cancer series of lino cuts. And it's a linoleum that you cut into it, a design, and you ink it and you print it on paper. It's lino cuts. And of breast cancer survivors. And I had, I was pitching it as Kama Sutra for lovers. And I actually tried to get it published. I even had a literary agent who said they all love it. They just don't know how to publish it, how to release it. They don't know. I've sent it to London, I've sent it to New York, and there's been no one's saying no. No one's saying yes either. And so I ended up sending a letter to Louise Hay, the Hay Foundation, and they sent me, and no, I got to slow down the story. And on a Wednesday, I was power walking in the Arroyos in Pasadena, California, and I was visualizing a check for $1,500. $1,700, excuse me. And I was just visualizing this check because I emailed them asking them if they would perhaps give me seed money to self-publish. And I told them my story, and I wanted this book out for women so that they would have something, especially childbearing women, so that they would know that there's something that they could connect to on a sensual, romantic, self-empowering level. So anyway, so it was a Wednesday, March 3rd. And that Sunday, my husband at the time here's all this mail, and I thought it was bills, and I opened the last envelope, and a yellow check fell out, and a letter from Shelley Anderson, her assistant, who said, "We never give money to this kind of thing. Usually it's AIDS, children, poverty, people in jail, blah blah blah. But we thought, we were so enamored by your email that we feel that hopefully this will be good to help you. $1,500 check, and we wish you luck." Of course, I send them both copies, once I got the book published. But it took me about 9 months, almost 10 months to get the book together. And then I had the most incredible stroke of luck. Susan Winter, who was a best-selling author, wrote the foreword. Did the book sell? Crazy? No, but it's there for women who need it. It's still there on Amazon as we speak. And it is a book of beautiful poetry, and I'm saying that because I didn't write them. It's Songs of Solomon in the Bible. The magic of that situation, of doing something because of that it would help women. By the way, on the side note, I've never had breast cancer. No one in my family's had breast cancer. There's no breast cancer in my family. So I started getting interviewed. I started getting magazines published about my work. And then my work ended up being in the Kinsey Institute. It's like 10 pieces, including they did a piece on my work on breast cancer and that work. I was invited to the USC Breast Cancer Symposium. My point is, the work was being recognized. And then I just, stopped promoting it because I figured it was there. It would always be there as long as I lived. That book would be there, available on Kindle or whatever, on paperback. And that was it. I wasn't going to continue promoting, and I'll tell you why. Because every breast cancer society, agency, support group did not want to support the work, believe it or not, because it was erotic. And then I know that women in their 60s and 70s were like triggered by it because they just wanted to save their lives, but the book wasn't for them. It was for young women facing breast cancer, single or double mastectomy, who had yet to meet a man, a boyfriend, a lover who would actually be able to relate to having a woman with no breasts and to find her beautiful. And the art was there do you understand? So in the beginnings of your missions, right? In the beginning of doing missions, and there'll be multiple missions, and they will morph into something else, into something else, into something else. There isn't just one mission. There's many missions. And we are brought to those missions at different sectors of our lives for the right reasons. I happened to be in a lab with some of the master printers. They were amazing master printers. One of them was actually from New York. He was a brilliant master printer. And they were rebels, guys that ran that that ran that lab in that college, like with a strong fist. And they were allowing us, and including me, to do very, very, very triggering work, right? I did a piece on Light Uncut called Khadija 47, based on a woman who had died in Paris, who was an advocate against female circumcision. And she was found mysteriously, conveniently, unalivened in the Seine River 2 weeks after her birthday. I was so shook by that story that I did a piece, an homage piece on her. And her name was Khadija. She was a model. She was one of Yves Saint Laurent's favorite models at the time. So my point to you, why is that important? Well, because you have to just allow yourself to be inspired by something and not poo-poo it and not denigrate it and go with it. And this will lead you to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing, which is exactly what happened with me. And of course, it gives you more confidence, more validity, more ideas, more projects, more opportunities, and so on. That's how finding your mission works. In other words, you don't look for your missions. It actually finds you. It's kind of like crystals and cats. the cat distribution system, the mission distribution system. Somehow you're like going there, what? Breast cancer? What the fuck? But there you go, carving linoleums into art that makes people triggered, uncomfortable, smiling, crying in gratitude, and so forth. Do you see what I'm saying? And it's interesting, Um, but most of these breast cancer support groups and so forth did not want to, because of the nature of the erotica. And again, I'm going to say that America is still knee jerk. It's the weirdest thing. It's the biggest consumer of porn, and yet it will not do this kind of shit to help women go, wow, there's a piece of art that actually looks like my body. What a fucking, and you might say, well, there's photos of women who have posed in books showing that, yes, those are women. It's not visual art, like a drawing or painting, like all the paintings that you and I take for granted in museums where the woman has both of her, breasts, for example. So that was an interesting education on the complexity and the hypocrisy of our society when it comes to healing, because it isn't just healing the body. It's healing one's sensuality and sexuality and reassessing what is beautiful and what is desirable. And I met so many women who had survived, and I heard so many of their stories and also stories of women who did not survive by self-harm or by not surviving, after a while. And I found that, the pink ribbons and the yearly October Think Pink bullshit was still happening, and yet it was surface. It wasn't really looking for a cure, and it wasn't going to find it because there were too many people on the payroll. That's also what I discovered in my journey in creating art. And why? Because I sat at USC with advocates, research people, grant writers, survivors, and so forth. And I was able to talk to them publicly, intimately, and so forth. And I realized after meeting other people, including Dr. Susan Love, who passed away, by the way, who became one of my friends on Facebook, because she also had thrown the gauntlet and was outraged at how no cure was still found. How convenient. So what'll happen as you go into your missions, as the world, as the universe reveals your path, you'll go down the rabbit hole and you'll become irreverent, rebellious, and passionate in sharing what you've learned. And that will help heal many people and also help push the agenda of change that needs to happen. There's a lot of challenges that will reveal itself in 2025, 2026, and 2027. But by 2032, we'll all be in a new rhythm. And this rhythm will have a good, robust stride that will be more in line with empowering the 99%. And it will become the new normal until we'll have 100% in that new rhythm, meaning there won't be a 1%. And I keep saying that again and again and again. So if you want to do something for the greater good as you work on your manifestation for your own personal goals, I invite you to add the new earth and 5D into one of your personal goals to co-create with the universe. That could be one of your missions. It could be literally your first step towards accomplishing a mission. And then the next level will be brought to you. But I think that you have divine appointments in 2025, and I know you know that already. And whether or not you make those appointments will be based on you listening to your monkey mind or going against it. It's really going to be you making a decision to surrender to something much older and wiser than your monkey mind, which is your soul. And in the beginning, you will be scared. And when you feel fear, this is the sign, as you well know, you've heard this before, that you're about to grow exponentially. And that means you have to lean in and not run. Running will make you more depressed, make you hate yourself more, and make you sabotage yourself even more, because something in you will know that you failed and betrayed yourself. And that's something that you should make a pact with yourself tonight, since you're up, or this morning, if it's morning, and put it on your fucking wall, on the side of your side table, your bed, the bedside table, and actually on your ceiling. So when you open your eyes and you look up on your ceiling, it says, do it. You should actually work with everything you have to brainwash yourself out of the brainwashing with as much tenacity, ferocity as you can. And by 2027, one day you'll look in the mirror and grin back with self-respect, self-love, and triumph. That should be your goal in this incarnation. There's nothing wrong with having played small for the entirety of one's life to a point. And then there's got to be a pivot that must be demanded out of yourself, because no one else can ask you to do it. In fact, no one else can ask you to do it. No, I know that because I've asked people I love to do it, begged them to do it, showed them the support. I couldn't force them to do it because their monkey mind and self-limited beliefs about their worth was more powerful than my support and my love. So that's why I know you're the only one that can do it for yourself. And you can't force whoever you love to do it, no matter how much you love them. They have to want it for themselves, just like you have to want it for yourself. So, with that said, there's a lot you have to work on today, because 2025 is right around the corner, my friend, and it's time to get real. So, I want to send you so much love on your journey, on your healing, on honoring your path in this life, and do as much as you can to honor it. And when you get scared, learn how to self-soothe and how to talk yourself on the ledge, and then leap. In fact, take a running start and go right off the cliff. Trust me, you'll land on your feet. And if you fall, you'll survive. All right. Bye, Polly. Love you, brother. Sending you much love on your journey. Yes, I will, my love, Jackie. I will. I'll post it as soon as it uploads. Namaste. Be well.